Hello, Internet! I'm Elliot the Purple-Haired Doofus, and welcome to the beginning chapters of The Seventh Bride by T. Kingfisher. Now, when I asked for this book for Christmas, I did not know that it was written by a pseudonym. The author's actual name is Ursula Vernon, and she is very popular for writing children's novels. And the reason that she picked a pseudonym to write this book is because she wrote it for adults, so that she could put violence and sex in it. And thank you. I haven't gotten to the violence and the sex yet, but still, Ursula, thank you. I'm covering 6 chapters today, and you would think that that would make me want to rush all the way through all those 6 chapters. But actually, the chapters are quite short, and I don't need to rush to explain everything that happened in the first 6 chapters, because a lot of it is exposition. The first chapter is all about introducing you to the main character, a 15-year-old girl named Ray. And she lives in a magical land. And you don't really get the sense that it's magical until about the 3rd chapter, when you really find out that magic is real and everyone's okay with it and everyone's normal about it. The problem with Ray is that she is engaged to a man against her will. Aside from her engagement, she is terrified of swans, because every time she goes out to eat her lunch, a swan comes and eats it for her. She also has this beautiful red dress that people want to have her wear when she meets her future husband. And it describes the red dress, and it describes how she's feeling a little bit off about her husband. Chapter 2 talks about her talking with her parents about this guy, and how they're telling her that he wants to marry her. And as soon as she finds out that he wants her, it kind of puts her on edge, and makes her suspect him even more. There's also a wonderful scene in there where she describes how she's going to miss living in the cottage that she's living in. And an incredibly depressing scene where she's talking about how she doesn't believe that she's worthy of anyone wanting her. And it's very, very sad. Chapter 3 starts out with a brilliant scene of her getting back at the swan that has stolen her lunch time and time and time again. And she actually feeds the swan a shit sandwich. I'm not kidding. She puts cow shit in bread and feeds it to the swan. It's hilarious. Chapter 3 also introduces the hubby, who is an older gentleman and rides into the scene in a beautiful pink horse. You heard me right, a pink horse. At the end of the scene, the betrothed, I guess you would call him, kisses her on her hand and gives her a magic ring on the same hand. And she feels her hand go numb and become incredibly heavy. And that's where I get the sense of foreboding about this character and the marriage that's about to happen. Chapter 4 introduces the idea that magic is real and awesome, because it talks about her having to work at this mill. And first she's talking about making sure rats don't get into the wheat. And then she starts talking about gremlins, and you're thinking, oh, ha ha ha, this girl has such an imagination. And then she starts talking about potatoes rising up from the ground and becoming zombie potatoes. And it's like, ha 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 ha, what a lovely imagination. And then it starts talking about how the entire village visits a woman to curse their land so that they don't get any magic creatures to screw with their crops. And it's like, ha 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 ha, oh, this is real. It's like, okay then. After it's done introducing magic as a real thing, Rhea is down by the lake, and her engaged fiance comes and invites her over to his place. In this land, universe, whatever you want to call it, going over to your fiance's place and spending time with them before you're married is looked down upon. But then again, it's also looked down upon to turn down a man of such power. And so by the end of the chapter, Rhea is very, very confused on what she wants to do. Chapter 5 begins with her talking to her friend Susanna. Now, Rhea, you just have to do what that man tells you to do. Because no one ever turns down a lord. And you have to do everything that they tell you to do. I've heard such gossip about how such horrible things happen to women who don't do what the Lord's asked them to do. But I don't wanna. I just feel really weird about him. And he looks weird and old and well then, you just gotta think. Do you want to be alive? Or do you want to be comfortable? That's obviously not the exact conversation that they had, but that's pretty much the gist that I got from reading it. So I really got the feeling that it's not just individuals that are pushing Rhea to go to this guy's place. It's not even him that's pushing her to go to this guy's place. It's society as a whole that's really pushing her to go to this guy's place. Rhea becomes distraught and decides to visit the conjurer's wife, who is a woman that goes around and curses all the crops so that magic stays out. And the conjurer's wife sees the ring that her fiancé put on his finger. You smell different. What is that smell? It smells different but recognizable at the same time. I smell magic on you. Give me your hand. And so Rhea gives her her hand. And the woman just goes, it's the ring. I smell magic in this ring. It's magic. You must go to him. It's at this point that Rhea really becomes afraid of her fiancé. With good reason! And she starts going through all of these reasons that he might be magical. And it's kind of hilarious. Chapter 6 is all about Rhea's parents packing her up so that she can go to visit her fiancé. And it's incredibly dark and incredibly heartbreaking. They're standing outside the cottage and her mom gives her a giant hug. And she says, I love you. I'm sorry. Be careful. And then Rhea and her father go off into the woods to visit her fiancé. They're following the instructions that her fiancé gave her through the forest until they get to this river where her father said that he would not continue on this journey. And her father gets down. I love you. Be careful. And I'm sorry. I am so sorry. And I'm just sitting there reading it like, they're like sending her off to her death. And it feels awful reading about these parents who feel as if they're killing their child by sending her off to this guy to be married. And that's the end of this chapter. And the end of my review so far. Tomorrow I will be covering chapters 7 through 11. So get to reading. Since I didn't have a question for myself at the end of Ready Player One, I don't have anything to answer. Since Rhea seems like the type that would totally go against anyone's wishes just so that she could be happy, I'm wondering, when is the last time that you've gone against the majority and done what you want to do so that you can be happy? The next book that I will be reading is Pest Control by Bill Fitzhugh. Just as with The Seventh Bride by T. Kingfisher, go out and grab it by any legal means necessary so that you can read it right along with me, or so that I don't spoil it for you before you read it. I have been the purple-haired doofus reminding you to watch your pajama radius, and I will see you all in the next chapters of The Seventh Bride by T. Kingfisher. Toodles!